What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tuesday, May 27th edition of the Ship My Money show. Hope you guys had a good Memorial Day weekend. Back with an 11-game MLB slate tonight, and I'm trying something different, starting at a different time. A few people had suggested this the other day with baseball being a sport that you don't really need shows around lock. You don't have a ton of changing information. Like, obviously, lineups come out and they can look a little bit different, and sometimes you'll get a little bit of a bump for a pitcher or, for a value bat in a batting order or something. But it's nothing that's like nuanced, really, for the most part, or super important. So some people had suggested doing the show earlier to give people more time to digest the information, get to it when they can. Obviously, you probably end up with less live viewers, less people in chat since people are working, but wanted to try this out. So if you have any feedback, feel free to mention it on Twitter, throw it in the comments, whatever. I figured I'd try it because it honestly works better with my schedule, gives me the afternoon off. So if people like it, it works better for me. If they don't, I can go back to doing it when I was doing it before. But wanted to try this out because I thought those people made a good point. Obviously, if it were like basketball or something, you're kind of just stuck doing it around lock. But with baseball, most of the important stuff can be touched on, and it's not going to change throughout the day. So figured I'd give it a try, and we're going to go game by game, as usual, using the Run the Sims projections that you see on the screen. If you do want to use those, they are available. Use the link in the description below. Use the promo code that you see at the bottom of the screen, UTA MLB, and get 10% off of your first month. I've been very happy with these. Had another good day yesterday. Didn't get first in anything, but finished top 10 on both the main and the night slate. So solid month for me, solid first month using them. I've been really happy with them. Everything that goes into them is stuff that I've talked about over the years, that Uticow has talked about in videos on Endgame. Just things that we think are important that maybe weren't always reflected in projections in the past. So we have those. We are still tweaking some stuff on the back end to get things exactly how we want. I think we'll actually have a little bit of a release update in the next couple of days on that I'm excited about. But yeah, I've been happy with them, and you can use them too. Link is in the description below, promo code at the bottom of the screen. One thing that I like as well that I touch on a lot during the shows is that they are fully detailed, so you can see exactly what's going into them. When you're looking at hitters, like if you're playing single entry or something like that, you can see home run projections, you can see stolen base projections, you can get an idea of actual upside for players, since median projections don't tell the full story. And you can also, if you see a projection that you disagree with, it's easier for you to decide how you want to adjust it, because you're not just kind of blindly flying and not knowing what went into it. You can see, oh, I think the stolen base projection is too high, or, oh, I think the pinch hit risk is too low, or whatever it may be. So I think that's good for you as well. And then also, as a reminder, if you are a single entry player or just somebody that doesn't play enough volume, that it makes sense for you to subscribe to the full projections package, get the fully detailed downloadable projections. We do have the $10 overlay option as well. It just overlays our projections onto your DraftKings lineups page. So if you're building by hand, it's really useful for that. That is included with the full package also, but you can also get it as a standalone option if that makes more sense for you. One other thing that obviously is going, probably the biggest issue with doing an early show, it's not that a whole lot's going to change in terms of, like, who you like as a pitcher or anything like that. There are just more likely to be early bugs in projections or in ownership or whatever. So I did still create a set of lineups to talk about my exposures, but always take those with a grain of salt. You should do it if I'm doing the show at 5. You certainly should do it at noon. Obviously, stuff like that is just going to change a lot, but it does still give us a talking point. You could see, I think, if you were paying attention when I was on the pitchers tab, that Garrett Crochet is currently projected in for Boston. He pitched yesterday, so that's a data provider issue that will definitely get straightened out between now and lock. But you're going to run into problems like that doing an early show, but you can pretty easily talk around those as well. So starting here with Minnesota taking on Tampa Bay. In Tampa Bay, Joe Ryan going for the Twins. Taj Bradley on the mound for the Rays. Taj Bradley has been absolute garbage for the most part so far this season. Does have a solid matchup here. He is cheap. $7K price tag, I think, alleviates some of the concerns. Like, at least you're getting him at a price point that he has honestly pitched to so far this season. Right-handed or the Twins rather, so far this season against right-handed pitching rank only 25th in strikeout percentage, so not a great strikeout matchup, but they have been below average in terms of production, also 25th in WRC+. Bradley, so far this season, has, again, not been good, only striking out 20.3% of hitters. That's down from 26.5% last year. His stuff plus grade is down 9 points. His pitching plus grade is down 11 points. So there is legitimate risk here. There's not a lot about Taj Bradley that looks good. That being said, he's showing up in like 30% of my lineups right now. He's projected for 12% ownership. There is still underlying talent here. The most likely case is that he ends up, going forward, being better than he has been to date, even if he doesn't get all the way back to what he's been in the past. You do have to keep in mind that his home park has changed. He's now pitching in a hitter-friendly park, rather, as opposed to one of the more favorable pitchers' parks in baseball when he had Tropicana Field. So that's going to hurt him. And then obviously the stuff just hasn't looked as good this year either. But you are getting that cheaper price tag at $7K. And then on the other side, I am getting to a lot of Joe Ryan here as well. $9,700 price tag on him. And this is one thing that stood out to me early in our projections. If we get off of that game and just look at overall pitchers, we actually have Joe Ryan projected as the highest scoring pitcher on the slate right now, at least. Hunter Brown is on the slate. I'm surprised that we don't have a higher projection on him, just because normally we've been coming in higher than the market on Hunter Brown projections, and today we're not. So I'm not sure what's driving that. I'm not sure if that will change between now and lock, but we're getting Joe Ryan right now, at least, as the highest projected pitcher on the slate. The Rays active roster does rank 18th in WRC plus against right-handed pitching. They're 4th in strikeout percentage. So it certainly looks like a good upside spot for Ryan, even if it is, a scary park to pitch in. Obviously, you can run pretty bad on home runs here, depending on how the wind is going. It looks like the wind is supposed to be lightly blowing out, but it's also going to be warm. So pretty favorable hitting conditions overall. So I do think there's a high ceiling for Ryan. I am a little scared by the ballpark, but certainly has the ability to rack up strikeouts here. He has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate so far this season at 31.5%. That's up 4 points from last year. His pitching plus grade is actually down a bit, but still above average. Stuff plus grade is about the same as last year. So I do like the upside for Joe Ryan. He's getting 15% ownership. I'm around 2x the field right now. I don't have a problem with that. But like I said, I am a little bit surprised that Hunter Brown's projection isn't higher. And that does obviously have an impact on how much Joe Ryan you end up getting to, because it impacts how much Hunter Brown you want to play. Offensively here, again, good park. So there is home run upside. I am getting a little bit north of the field on some of these guys. But starting on the Minnesota side, Cody Clemens, he hit 5th yesterday. He's only $3,500. He is a decent value option, getting 5% projected ownership going up against Bradley, who again has struggled this year. 135 expected ISO to lefties, 142 to righties. So that's the plus for Bradley, is that he's not giving up a lot of expected power. He's just not striking guys out either. Cody Clemens so far, has pretty much played his way into an everyday role. 439 expected WOBA, 325 expected ISO in a very limited 57 at bat or plate appearance sample size for him. Going back to last year, 156 plate appearances against right-handed pitching, still 226 expected ISO. So there is some cheap power here in a park that plays up home run power. Royce Lewis is cheap at 3,800. He has struggled so far this season, but we know the underlying talent for him, and you're getting a cheap price tag on him. So I think getting to some Royce Lewis makes sense. He's in 10% of my lineups right now. Field projected for about 5% ownership. 5 to 10% ownership basically to Cody Clemens, Royce Lewis, Brooks Lee, Ryan Jeffers, Trevor Larnach, Ty France, most of this Minnesota lineup. And for the most part, I'm in the ballpark there, just getting a little bit over it on Clemens and Lewis in particular, which I don't have any problem with, especially Royce Lewis, just getting to that underlying talent upside on him and hoping that he rediscovers it sooner rather than later. On the other side for Tampa Bay, you do obviously have a tough matchup against Joe Ryan, but I am getting north of the field on the best Tampa Bay bats, despite also being north of the field on Ryan. And I'm not really surprised by that, given the upside that does come with this ballpark and the fact that you are getting low ownership to Tampa Bay. In addition to, Joe Ryan does struggle with power. 228 expected ISO allowed to right-handed hitters so far this year, 213 expected ISO allowed to left-handed hitters. So it is a real boom or bust spot for Joe Ryan when you consider what he's good at, what he struggles with. One other negative for Ryan, and again, this kind of goes back to why I was a little surprised that he's currently the highest projected pitcher on the slate for us. He does have very drastic strikeout splits between right-handed and left-handed hitters. He's only struck out 21.5% of lefties so far this year compared to 38.5% of righties. This Tampa Bay lineup only has 3 right-handed hitters in it, or projected lineup rather, only has 3 right-handed hitters with Yandy Diaz, Junior Caminero, and Danny Jansen. Other than that, you have switch hitters, you have left-handed hitters. They're not necessarily all the best. Cam Misner, Taylor Walls, Chandler Simpson. These guys aren't great hitters. Jonathan Aranda is very good. So are Josh Lowe and Brandon Lau. But it does not project as a good lineup from a split standpoint for Joe Ryan. So I'm getting around 2x the field on Josh Lowe, Brandon Lau, Junior Caminero, Yandy Diaz. They're all getting right around 5 to 7% ownership. I do like the upside that they offer. I do think it's likely that you get good tournament results from one side of this game. You have a good strikeout pitcher in Ryan. You have power hitters in a good park for hitting home runs on Tampa Bay. So I do like the idea of getting to either side. You do have pretty reasonable pricing on Tampa for that upside as well. Josh Lowe, 4,500. Brandon Lau, only 4,100. 4K on Caminero, 4,200 on Diaz. So I am interested in both sides here. And I will be curious to see what actually happens to my Joe Ryan exposure as the day goes on, as lineups get confirmed, projections update, all of that stuff. Certainly, again, I think he has upside here, but I am a little concerned by the number of left-handed bats in this lineup in addition to the park. White Sox taking on the Mets in Citi Field, about a 5 implied run total for the Mets, about 3.5 for the White Sox. Tyler McGill going for the Mets. Jonathan Cannon going for the White Sox. Jonathan Cannon not getting any ownership. I'm not getting to him. I don't really see any reason that you would on an 11-game slate against the Mets. I do think he has made some improvements this year, but this is not the slate or the matchup that I really want to find out. I think the biggest implication there is probably that it is likely that maybe projections are going to be a little bit high on the Mets in general. Jonathan Cannon's stuff plus grade is up to average. It's up nearly 5 points from last year. Pitching plus also coming in as average. Still not a good strikeout pitcher, but he is somebody that when he's on is able to keep the ball on the ground. Not something that really transcends to DFS production. So he is somebody that, when I say I think he's better this year than he has been in the past, it's more so from a real life standpoint, his ability to get outs and not give up damage maybe, than it is from a DFS standpoint. It's not translating to strikeouts. He's not somebody that has great strikeout stuff, but if he can locate, he is going to be able to keep the ball on the ground. For Tyler McGill, he has also been good this year, has a good strikeout matchup against the White Sox. Third highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 31% so far this season. Stuff plus grade is up 6.5 points. Pitching plus grade is up nearly 10 points from last year. He's over a full standard deviation better than average in my outcome metric that looks for pitchers that can get strikeouts, ground balls, and infield pop-ups, the best best outcomes of at bats that you can get. He's like nearly 1.2 standard deviations better than average. He's been very, very good. The only downside on him is how deep into games he works, or in his case, doesn't work. He does tend to be a little bit limited in that regard. And at 8,800, he's not super cheap, but he does have the good matchup here against the White Sox. Clearly tons of strikeout upside. He's getting about 21% ownership. I'm getting to about 14%. So I do think that he looks like a pretty good option. The strikeout upside certainly is there. And, maybe he'll work a little bit deeper into this game than he typically has. Not getting to any Cannon, as I said. Offensively, even though, I did mention that Cannon has been a bit better this year, that stuff is baked into our projections, and I am still getting to the Mets offense a pretty decent amount here. 14% projected ownership coming in to Juan Soto. I'm getting to 24%. It's been talked about a lot, but Soto's only 5,100, and he's still been very, very productive this year, even if it's down a little bit from last year. But his expected numbers are still very good. against right-handed pitching so far this season. 423 expected WOBA is 100 points higher than his actual WOBA. 313 expected ISO is 120 or 100 and like 120 points better than his actual 195 ISO. There's no real reason to be concerned about Juan Soto's production this year. So going right back to him, I think at 5,100 makes a lot of sense. He's going to be popular, but I'm getting even a little bit more than the field. 7.9% walk percentage for Jonathan Cannon. Not elite, but not somebody that walks a ton of guys. So is pretty likely to be working in the strike zone against Soto as well. Only a 150 expected ISO to lefties. Again, he is generally good at keeping the ball on the ground, but I'll take my chances with a discounted Juan Soto. I'm getting the 15% Brandon Nimmo. Field's at about 10%. And then you're getting basically 5 to 10% ownership for the field on the rest of the Mets lineup. And that's more or less where I am as well. We will want to keep an eye on the status of Mark Vientos. He was a late scratch, I believe, yesterday, at some point over the weekend. I think it was yesterday. So remains to be seen if he is in the lineup. If he is, right-handed bat against Cannon, so doesn't have the platoon advantage, but Cannon has actually had a lower strikeout percentage and allowed more expected power to right-handed hitters so far this season. So that would point to guys like Vientos, like Pete Alonso, as strong individual plays. Brandon Nimmo and Soto, though, look like the two guys with the, I think, best salaries to take advantage of. Like, they're just underpriced. I mentioned it with Soto, his expected numbers just being so much better than his actual, and it's very similar for Brandon Nimmo as well. Power numbers are pretty much in line, 178 actual ISO, 187 expected, but his expected WOBA is like 40 points, 45 points better than actual this year. And expected WOBA isn't the best metric for DFS because it will have a tendency to overvalue getting on base, drawing walks, which isn't super valuable for your DFS production. But when you're talking about a $3,600 hitter that does also have power with that 187 expected ISO, it is worth pointing out that he's been getting pretty unlucky, and that does have an impact on salary. The 282, I think, actual WOBA is just driving down that salary. So Soto and Nimmo look like the priorities for me from the Mets. The rest of the lineup looks fine here. On the White Sox side, not getting to too much. 5% Miguel Vargas is my highest owned bat from the White Sox right now. He's the highest projected ownership at 3%. I don't think there's a lot to say there. Like I said, Miguel's been very, very good for the Mets so far this season. There are 22 offenses to choose from on the slate. You don't have to really prioritize getting to the White Sox at all. If you look at splits for McGill, much better strikeout percentage against righties than lefties, 36% to 25.5. But that's still a very good strikeout percentage against lefties, just not as good as against righties. Similar expected power numbers, 130 expected ISO to lefties, 125 to righties. There's nothing that really you can single out here as being advantageous from a split standpoint that you can take advantage of against McGill. Red Sox taking on the Brewers in Milwaukee. As I mentioned earlier, we currently have the wrong Red Sox pitcher in projections right now. That will obviously be cleared up by lock, but it's not Garrett Crochet today. It was Garrett Crochet yesterday. For the Red Sox today, it is actually Cooper Criswell. He is on DraftKings, $6,000. Probably not somebody that you're going to be playing, but don't take that as gospel because obviously I did not run anything with him in. On the other side, you have Aaron Savali going up against the Red Sox. He's getting about 8% ownership. Decent projection at 6,700, 12.2 fantasy point projection. He's not any sort of a priority. He is getting 8% ownership. It's not a great matchup against the Red Sox, but at least you are getting them outside of Fenway Park, and it is a good strikeout matchup. They're 6th in WRC plus, in strikeout percentage rather, against right-handed pitching this year. They are 14th in WRC plus. If you need a cheap pitcher and you land on some Savali, I think that's fine, but not somebody that I would, be comfortably building around or anything like that. Offensively, not really prioritizing much in this game either. I am a little bit above the field, though, on some of the Red Sox. Rafael Devers getting 6% ownership. I'm getting to 11% against Savali. Jaron Duran, 8% projected ownership. I'm getting to about 9 to 10%. So clearly you're never going to be upset about getting to those guys. Duran gives you stolen base upside and some power upside. Devers has been great this year despite his horrible start. So getting to him is always going to be fine against right-handed pitching so far this season. Like I said, Devers has been great in 170 plate appearances, 440 expected WOBA, 305 expected ISO. The expected numbers are actually better than the actual numbers, and the actual numbers have been great. Jarren Duran, 163 expected ISO, is a little bit lower than his actual by like 25 points, but still solid for somebody that gives you the stolen base upside that he offers as well. Very limited sample for Savali so far this season, but if you go back to last season, 170 expected ISO to lefties, 158 to righties. He's kind of just a guy in terms of his ability to pitch. He's not bad. He's not great. I'm not really surprised to just kind of see like 5 to 10% ownership coming in on a lot of these Red Sox bats. Trevor Story getting into 8% of my lineups at 3,400. That's something that I would like to stop because he's been bad this year, but he hasn't been quite as bad in terms of expected numbers as his actual numbers, but he has been terrible in terms of either. 278 expected WOBA, 150 expected ISO against right-handed pitching with a 30% strikeout percentage so far this season, but he is 3,400, so he's still getting into some lineups just because there is power and speed in there somewhere. Don't know where at this point, but still getting him a little bit at the cheap price tag. But to me, Devers and Duran, obviously the guys I would like to get to the most, and I think everybody would probably be on board with that. On the other side for Milwaukee, not getting too much of them in what I ran, but again, that was with them projected to face Garrett Crochet. Going up against Cooper Criswell is obviously a different matchup. Not that Criswell is terrible, but he's also not Garrett Crochet. I'm also seeing Dick Fitz listed other places, so this is probably why so I don't know for sure. I'm guessing this is why Crochet is showing up right now in our data. I'm guessing that we don't have a pitcher listed, or the data provider doesn't have a pitcher listed. So we probably like just pull most recent or something like that. I don't know. I'm guessing. But that's probably what it is. So we don't really know, I guess, at this point, who's pitching for the Red Sox. Obviously, this is going to be the drawback to doing early shows. But I can just quickly touch on both guys, which is a weird way to word it when you're talking about somebody whose name is Dick Fitz. But anyway, limited sample on him going back to last year, 186 expected WOBA to righties, no power allowed to lefties, but again, limited sample there. I don't think either of these guys are pitchers that you would like actively be avoiding, but I don't think either one is horrible either. I don't think you're going to get a situation where, Milwaukee becomes like the top stack on the slate or anything like that. 169 expected ISO to righties, 109 to lefties for Criswell since the start of last season. So assuming it's one of those guys, or maybe some combination of both of them, I think it's kind of just a middle of the road spot for the Brewers. And most likely you're going to take some shots at William Contreras, take some shots at Christian Yelich. That's fine. They are in a good park for home runs, but you're probably just going to be looking at, kind of a middle of the road secondary stack for Milwaukee, regardless of which guy it is. Cincinnati taking on Kansas City in another game that has like an 8.5-ish total here. Just another kind of completely mediocre offensive environment. Not a good park for hitting home runs in KC. Good park for scoring runs, though. 8 total on this one. Brady Singer facing his former squad in Kansas City. For the Royals, we have Daniel Lynch. No real ownership coming into Lynch at 6,200. He is not likely to go super deep into this game. I do think our initial projection on Lynch is a little bit light here. You can see that we only have him projected to face 5 batters. Probably goes a little bit deeper than that, I think. He threw 21 pitches on the 24th. He threw 40 on the 21st. I don't think 5's crazy. I think maybe actually, I think 5, kind of as I'm thinking through it, 5 probably does make sense because I don't know that he gets a third inning. So when you're talking about a projection, they probably would like Daniel Lynch to go 2 innings. I don't know if they would bring him out for a third. Maybe they would, and that projection should be 7. But either way, not somebody that you need to worry about for DFS. Not going to go very far into this game, I wouldn't think. Brady Singer on the other side, very, very tough strikeout matchup. $7,500 price tag is decent, but you're in a very difficult park for getting strikeouts. You're facing a team that is very difficult to strike out themselves. And as you would expect, they are more difficult to strike out when they are at home. The Royals active roster has the lowest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching so far this season at just 17%. So not going to be very interested in Singer either. He has also dropped off a little bit in terms of strikeout percentage so far this year, 20.8% K percentage compared to 22% last year. His stuff plus grade is up 4.5%. Pitching plus is up 1.5%. So I don't think you're looking at a talent loss or anything like that. I just don't think this is a very good spot to be looking to get to Brady Singer. Offensively, like I said at the top of the game. Just another game that's just kind of there. I don't think there's a lot that stands out, but there is talent offensively. You have Bobby Witt on one side of this game. He's getting 8% ownership. He's the highest projected ownership in the game. He's my highest owned bat in the game right now at 10%. Salvador Perez, 5% owned, 3,200. He's now catcher only on DraftKings. We've seen him just flipping back and forth, first base catcher, then first base only, now catcher only. Obviously, if he's going to have only one position, catcher is going to be more valuable than first base. He has been underperforming his expected numbers this year to some extent. That could be driven by the park. It could be driven by the fact that he's slow as shit. But he does have a 372 expected WOBA and a 232 expected ISO compared to a 284 actual WOBA and a 146 actual ISO. So even if you kind of want to cut the distance there and say, like, there's probably some contributing factors, he's probably not getting that unlucky. He probably is still getting unlucky. And when you know that that's baked into the $3,200 salary, it does make him look like a decent value option with some upside here. So I'm getting to about 9% of him, about 8% of Pasquantino. Just another secondary team here, I think, against Brady Singer. If we dig into his splits a little bit, going back to last year, did have or has had issues suppressing left-handed power. 206 expected ISO to lefties, only 121 to righties. Similar story so far this year. 226 expected ISO to lefties, 146 to righties. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of left-handed power on Kansas City, and this park does downplay it as well. Pasquantino is your best bet for a left-handed home run, I think, at $3,400. First base, though, obviously a pretty deep position as well. On the other side, for Cincinnati, not the best situation when you have this kind of quasi bullpen game with Lynch followed by the bullpen. Not getting to them, neither is the field. Highest projected guy is Santiago Espinal at 4%. I'm getting to 2. I'm not getting to any De La Cruz at 6,200. If you wanted to, by all means, obviously that's fine. You will have him hitting from the weaker side of the plate in his first at bat against Lynch. Then, obviously remains to be seen who comes in out of the Kansas City bullpen. But it goes without saying that Elly De La Cruz gives you massive upside. This is also a park that kind of plays to De La Cruz's strengths, given the massive outfield, his ability to stretch singles into doubles and doubles into triples. But there's also going to be plenty of good shortstops on this slate. You have, Bobby Witt on the other side of this game. You don't have Gunnar. You don't have Mookie Betts. So that, weakens it a little bit, I guess. But still not looking like a priority for me or for the field. Rockies taking on the Cubs in Chicago. Good pitching weather again in this one. Wind blowing in, cool weather, very similar to yesterday where we saw the wind really knock down a Pete Crow Armstrong would have been home run. So, very, very sensitive ballpark to wind. We have Cade Horton on the mound for the Cubs at $8,000, projected to be one of, if not the most popular pitchers on the slate. I am getting to 50% of him, so I'm just eating this chalk. This was a conversation that already came up earlier today in my Discord. My assumption was that I would just be playing it, and I am. I played a lot of Tyon yesterday, even more than the field. I'm getting to more than the field on Horton right now as well. He projects as, kind of just a guy as a pitcher, projects for like a 4.5 FIP, around the 20% strikeout percentage, but those projections are assuming he's facing major league teams, and today he's facing the Rockies, who are not a major league team, in great pitching conditions in Wrigley. Happy to get to Horton. No issues with that. Obviously there are 21 other pitchers on the slate that you can get to. So if you want to make the case, look, I'm playing large field tournaments. I want to just not play the guy that's 30% owned, and I'll spread my exposures out across the field and take shots at other guys. There's nothing wrong with that. There's not necessarily a right answer there. And me saying what I'm doing is certainly not intended to be presented as that. But for me, he's in half my lineups right now. He projects very well. He's one of the highest projected pitchers on the slate in terms of raw points. Clearly, that's going to make him one of the best value options when he's only 8K. The Rockies are absolute garbage, and that's when they play in Coors Field. Overall, they have the second highest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching. They have a 75 WRC plus, which is the worst in baseball by a wide margin. Pittsburgh is second worst at 84. It's just a joke of an offense. They have a few, solid enough bats individually with Beck, Tovar, Goodman, McMahon, and Doyle. Tolia can hit the ball hard when he does hit it, but still a lot of strikeouts and overall a just horrible offense. So getting to a lot of Horton. On the other side, tough matchup for Herman Marquez. He's only 5K. He's in good pitching conditions. We just saw him put up like 20 plus fantasy points the other day at no ownership. So, if you wanted to make that case of good pitching conditions and a 5K price tag, be my guest, but I'm not getting to him. Neither is the field. The matchup against the Cubs is obviously one of the more difficult matchups you're going to find. They're tied for 4th in WRC plus against right-handed pitching this season. They rank 14th in strikeout percentage. I'm just not getting to Herman Marquez, at least right now. Offensively, though, I'm not getting to this game either, and neither is the field. If you want to make the case of, fuck the weather, it's the Cubs, okay. Like, you're probably going to run bad on home runs, but they do have guys that have a lot of power. One thing, the strongest argument for that, though, about the Cubs would be that they also steal bases. And so this is a power hitting team, but they're not completely dependent on hitting home runs to get you fantasy points. You also can get stolen bases from a lot of this team. If you look at our projections, and you go over and sort by stolen base projections, you can see that, we have high stolen base projections here on Kyle Tucker, Pete Crow Armstrong, Nico Horner, John Birdie, if he's in the lineup, Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ and Suzuki can at least run a little bit. So there are other ways for them to get there. If they single, that can still be 8 points. So they do have upside, even if they're not hitting home runs at the same rate because of the weather. That being said, though, 8% projected ownership, the highest projected ownership coming into this game with Kyle Tucker. I'm only getting like 2% of him. I'm 5% or less on everybody on the Cubs. I am 3% or less on everybody on the Rockies, and that's fine with me. Clearly, if I were to choose one side or the other, though, it would be the Cubs side, and then just hope that you can get some stolen bases there. Toronto taking on the Rangers in a good hitter's park. Still a modest total in this game, coming in at 7.5. The Blue Jays have Bowden Francis on the mound. The Rangers have Nathan Eovaldi. Eovaldi getting about 9% ownership. Francis getting about 8%. And I'm below the field on both. This park is scary for pitching. It is a good home run park. Also, very, very tough strikeout matchup for Nathan Eovaldi at an elevated $10,300 salary. So I'm okay with not getting to him. He's a good pitcher, and he has seen an uptick in strikeouts this year at 27.5%. His pitching plus grade is up as well. But the Blue Jays are a very difficult team to strike out. We saw it yesterday with DeGrom not getting strikeouts. They have the 3rd lowest K percentage against right-handed pitching in baseball this year, and there's just going to be plenty of other pitchers I can get to on this slate. For Francis, it is a better matchup against the Rangers, but you do have the possibility of Corey Seager being back today. If Corey Seager is back, this does become a tough or a worse matchup for Francis. So that remains to be seen. There was talk on the Rangers game yesterday that Seager could come back and DH today potentially. That does make the lineup as a whole better, just because Seager's going to be, if he's in, going to be hitting near the top of the order, and he's tough to strike out. He's obviously just a really good overall hitter. But Francis is $5,700. So very, very cheap. He is going to be a good value option if you need to save some money. Since the start of last season, 22.2% strikeout percentage. So far this year, Francis has struck out only 18% of hitters. That's down from 25% last year. Stuff plus grade is down about 5 points. Pitching plus grade still coming in as average. So I think probably the truth is that Francis isn't a great pitcher, but he's also better than 5,700. So if you need him as a value play, fine. I haven't, at least so far, on, in the lineups I ran before the show. Offensively, I am getting to this game a bit more than the field. Starting on the Toronto side, not getting to too much of them, but it is a tough matchup against Eovaldi. Me not getting too much Eovaldi in my lineups has more to do with Eovaldi's salary than thinking it's a great spot for Toronto or thinking Eovaldi's not good or anything like that. Basically 2 to 4% projected ownership coming into the Blue Jays. Addison Barger, my highest owned guy at 3,100. So nothing that really is standing out to me on the Toronto side. I am taking some more shots at the Texas side, though. Did not have Corey Seager projected in. If he's in, obviously Texas does look better as a stack, but still getting to 12% Wyatt Langford at 6% projected ownership, getting to more Marcus Semien in the field at 3,100. He hasn't been good this year. He's been down in the order, but second base is still a generally weak position. Semien does, kind of like Trevor Story, have some underlying talent in there somewhere. Getting a little bit above the field on Josh Smith, on Adolis Garcia, around the field on 6% owned Josh Young as well. Francis, as I mentioned, has struggled this year. So far, a 277 expected ISO to lefties, 158 to righties, much more respectable. 158 since the start of last year to righties as well, 211 to lefties. So ideally, you do find left-handed power here. The problem is that doesn't really exist on this team. If Seager is out, it pretty much leaves you with Josh Smith. But if Seager is in, again, looks like a really good spot to be getting to Corey Seager if he is playing. A's taking on the Astros in Houston. So Park downgrade probably. Don't really know, but probably for the A's offense. Brutal matchup for the A's offense going against Hunter Brown. JP Sears going on the other side for the A's. No ownership coming into a $7,900 Sears. I'm not getting there either. 23% projected ownership coming into $11K Hunter Brown. I don't have him right now. Like, he's in 3% of my lineups right now. Like I touched on earlier, talking about Joe Ryan, I think Hunter Brown is a very, very good pitcher. Usually so do our projections. So I'm not really sure what is driving the relatively low, like he still has a good projection, but relatively low projection on him. You can see we still have him projected north of 6 strikeouts. We have him projected to go nearly 6 innings, which is, a relatively high average, outs projection because of the way things are going to skew. It's not the median, it's the mean. Hunter Brown, projected to face 24 batters. There's nothing that jumps off the page as being too low in terms of the inputs here. So my assumption is that it's probably that he has to face Jacob Wilson we're assuming, at the top of the order multiple times. He's very, very difficult to strike out. The A's active roster against right-handed pitching this year ranks, where the hell is it? Oh, it's not under Oak. They have the 29th in strikeout percentage. That is being driven by a couple of guys in particular, Jacob Wilson, but those guys are near the top of the order. They also are tied for 4th in WRC+. So it is a very tough matchup for Brown. He has been excellent this year. I would certainly not fault anyone for just getting to him because he's that good. But at the same time, you do also have not only that tough matchup, but you have to put it in the context of this slate as well. Brown has a 30.5% strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching, which is obviously great. It's up nearly 6 points from last year. It's 4th best on this slate. Joe Ryan's is better, and he's in a good strikeout matchup against Tampa. Carlos Rodon's is better. He's in a good strikeout matchup against the Angels. Tyler McGill's is better. He's in a good strikeout matchup against the White Sox. And then Hunter Brown comes in 4th, still very good, but he's got that matchup against the A's. So I do get it. And, again, it is reflected in our projections. This is a spot where if I do end up just not getting to Hunter Brown, again, it has nothing to do with his talent. You're not going to be surprised at all if he just goes out there and shoves and scores 30 fantasy points. But you do have these alternatives that you can look to that are getting similar or less ownership. They're less expensive. They're striking guys out at similar or better rates this year. I don't mind that alternative and just hope that it's not Hunter Brown ceiling day. So I don't think there's a correct answer here, but right now mine looks like it would be to just kind of find other alternatives that do give you similar range of outcomes in better matchups. Even though, again, Hunter Brown's been great. He has that 30.5% strikeout percentage. He has seen a 6-point jump in stuff plus up to 110. He's seen an 8-point jump in pitching plus up to almost 113. His fastball velo's up almost a full mile an hour from 96 to 96.8. He's better than a full standard deviation, better than average in my outcomes metric. He's been great. I think outside of Tarek Skubal, he's the best pitcher in the American League right now. But salary is a thing in DFS. Ownership's a thing in DFS. All those things are big factors. It's not just picking the guys that are the most talented. So right now, I'm not getting to a lot of Hunter Brown. I have very little confidence in that, but I can at least explain why it's happening, and it does make sense. It's not like the day that I didn't play him against the White Sox or something. So hopefully that all makes sense. Offensively here, wouldn't expect to be getting too much of the A's side, and I'm not. Just like was the case with Evaldi. Not to say that Evaldi's as good as Brown, but similar in that, my lack of exposure to Hunter Brown has nothing to do with thinking the A's are going to do well tonight. It just has to do with thinking that I can find similar production for less salary. So not getting to much Oakland or Sacramento, whatever. Lawrence Butler in 6% of my lineups is the high mark there. On the Astros side against Sears, I do think this is a very, very, very interesting spot to be getting to the Astros, and I am getting to them, which I actually was saying I thought it was interesting before I saw that I was playing them. I'm glad that I am because I think this is a really interesting spot to talk about splits and ballpark nuances. In Houston, you have the short right field, or short left field rather, where you can pretty easily just, if you hit pulled fly balls, you're in a good spot in Houston. And you have a pitcher in JP Sears that struggles with right-handed power, 220 expected ISO to righties since the start of last year, 227 so far this season. And he's going to be facing an Astros lineup that, while it isn't great, it's going to have like nothing but right-handed hitters, and they're cheap. Yainer Diaz, $3,400. Christian Walker, who we know has a ton of power, $3,800. Jeremy Pena, $4K. Isaac Paredes, who was built to hit home runs in this park, $4,300. Altuve, $3,900 with MPE. Jake Myers, $3,500. Very, very cheap Houston team in, I think, just a matchup and park that is like built for them to hit home runs. Even though they don't have great home run hitters, I think putting JP Sears in Houston, it just like elevates everybody in this Houston lineup. So I'm getting to 19% Diaz right now. I'm getting to 17% Walker, 16% Pena, 13 on Altuve, about 9 or 10 on Paredes. Ownership wise, 13, 14% coming into Altuve, 12% to Pena, around 10% to all of Paredes, Walker, Diaz. So they are popular, but with it being an 11-game slate, it's not crazy ownership here. But I think they look good from an upside standpoint. I think they look good from a value standpoint. If you look at home run projections here, you can see Christian Walker with a massive one. Paredes, Diaz, Pena, Altuve, all reasonable as well. Even Myers getting into the mix, Brendan Rodgers. So yeah, I really like the Astros here. I like the way that they match up. Yankees taking on the Angels in Anaheim. Carlos Rodon taking on Tyler Anderson. Very tough matchup for Tyler Anderson. Not going to be getting to much of him. Fields at 2%. I'm at 1%. Carlos Rodon, $10,500 price tag, 21% ownership. I'm getting to 14%. He's certainly one of the guys that you can use in place of Hunter Brown. We actually have him with a little bit higher projection here. 31% strikeout percentage this year. Stuff plus grade is actually down about 5 points. Pitching plus grade down 4 to 5 points as well. But strikeouts have been up. 26.5% K percentage last year, 31% so far this year. This Angels team is generally better against left-handed pitching. Since the start of last season, they are 11th in WRC plus on their active roster against lefties. They are 12th in strikeout percentage, whereas they have the highest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching. But, again, I think that not McGill, I just read that in chat. I think that Rodon certainly looks good here, but he is fully priced. Like, DraftKings is not screwing around with their pitcher pricing much lately, getting all these guys north of 10K. On the one hand, you have a bunch of hitters that are going to be cheap because there's 22 offenses going. You can afford them, but also you're paying full price here for Rodon. So I think he looks good, but also I think he is correctly priced. Offensively, starting on the Yankee side, Tyler Anderson is generally reverse splits. He does have a good changeup. 166 expected ISO to righties since last year. 195 so far this season, so he has struggled a little bit there. Aaron Judge showing up 23% for me. Paul Goldschmidt at 4,600 showing up 29% of the time. We've seen a nice resurgence from Goldschmidt so far this season. He is getting a little bit more expensive now at 4,600, but I am still getting to him a lot. I'm getting to Trent Grisham, even in the lefty-lefty matchup, if he is in. And then a drop-off for me, Volpe, Bellinger, Wells, all showing up like 5 to 10%. And it's pretty similar for the field. 17% projected ownership for Judge, around 10% for Goldschmidt, 8% for Grisham, Volpe, and then it drops off. So I am north of the field on the Yankees as a whole, but mostly it's being driven by Judge, Goldschmidt, and then Grisham if he's in the lineup. On the other side for the Angels, I am actually getting to them. So this is a little bit different than the spots with the spot with Hunter Brown and with Evaldi. It's more similar to the Joe Ryan spot, I think, because you do have massive strikeout upside for Carlos Rodon, but you do have upside for these Angels here at pretty reasonable salaries. Zach Neto, not getting any ownership. He is 5K. I'm getting to 17% of him, but he does have stolen base upside here. You can see that we have a pretty good stolen base projection for him. Rodon, historically, not very good at holding runners, I don't think. You have a decent home run projection here as well. Good park for power. Rodon has only allowed a 126 expected ISO to righties so far this year, but it's 184 going back to last year. So as a contrarian play, I think Neto makes sense. You still only have a 4K price tag on Taylor Ward for God knows what reason. Like, it's not a good matchup, but he's just a much better hitter than $4,000. And then you just have some raw power with Joe Adell, with Jorge Soler. Not getting to tons of those guys, but like 5 to 10% of them, 12% Ward. I don't mind taking some shots at the good, or at least, the highest upside hitters in this Angels lineup, getting some negative correlation, maybe use them as a one-off or a two-man, pair them with like Houston, for example, to get some low ownership mixed into that stack. So I think that makes some sense, but, not priorities overall. Miami taking on the Padres in San Diego. For the Padres, we have Stephen Kolek. For the Marlins, we have Max Meyer in a tough matchup. Field getting to about 3% Meyer. I'm not getting to him. Field's getting to about 8% Kolek. I'm not getting to him. Kolek's just up to 8,400, which makes it tough for me to want to pay that salary. Meyer, I think, does have, he has shown improvement this year. Strikeout stuff has ticked up, albeit in part driven by like a 14 strikeout matchup. Or strikeout game rather, but he does have a 26.5% strikeout percentage. It is backed up by nearly a 9-point jump in stuff plus, which still grades out as below average at 97, but it's up a lot from last year. But a massive jump in pitching plus at 108.5, well above average, probably indicates that his command has been very good in addition to having, solid enough stuff. So that combined with his pedigree does make me think he's a pretty good pitcher, but very, very tough strikeout matchup against the Padres makes me not all that interested at 8,200. Offensively here for Miami, I am not getting to them much, which is kind of surprising because it's surprising because I play them a lot. It's not surprising because they have one of the lowest run totals on the slate. Not really getting to them. I have one lineup with Jesus Sanchez, and that's about it. On the other side for the Padres, not getting to much of them either. Again, I think Meyer is a solid pitcher. I'm getting some Machado. I'm getting some Tatis. I'm getting some Merrill. Those are obviously the guys that you would want to get to if you're going to the Padres, just getting to the best hitters here. But nothing that stands out as a priority. Meyer, so far this season, 148 expected ISO to righties, has struggled a bit in terms of expected power allowed with a 211 expected ISO to lefties. That would point you toward Jackson Merrill, toward Jake Cronenworth, toward Gavin Sheets. But nothing that really looks like a priority for me from the Padres. Pirates taking on the Diamondbacks in Arizona. Corbin Burns on the mound for the Diamondbacks. And for the Pirates, we have Mike Burrows. Burrows not getting any ownership. Brutal matchup for him. I don't see any reason to go to him. On the other side, though, Burns does have the good matchup here against the Diamondbacks. He is reasonably against the Pirates, rather. He is reasonably priced at 9,300, especially in the context of this slate. When you consider that that means he's 1,200 less expensive than Rodon. He's 1,700 less expensive than Hunter Brown. So I do like Corbin Burns quite a bit. He's getting 14% ownership. I'm north of that at 22%. Has this good matchup against the Pirates. The Pirates' active roster is second worst in WRC plus, as I mentioned earlier, against right-handed pitching this year. They're 13th in strikeout percentage. You certainly could do better than that. But overall, good matchup for Burns. He's not a great strikeout pitcher either. We saw the strikeout numbers kind of trending down at the end of his stint in Milwaukee. They came down last year. This year, he's at 23.5%. He was at 23.1% last year. Stuff plus grade is down almost 11 points this year. Pitching plus grade is down like 14 points. He did really struggle to start the season, though, and has been better lately. So I do think you'll see Burns kind of turn things around, probably be better going forward than he has been to date overall, and certainly a good matchup for him here. Looking at the offenses, not expecting to get to much of Pittsburgh. Around 5% on O'Neal Cruz. That's my highest owned bat from the Pirates. He does give you stolen base upside. Corbin Burns was unbelievably bad at preventing stolen bases last year. Historically, he hasn't been as bad as last year, so he probably gets back closer to average, but Cruz will still look to run. Does have a lot of left-handed power as well. Brian Reynolds, I think, is fine. Spencer Horwitz, if he's in the lineup, is a cheap option, but no priorities from the Pirate side. On the Diamondback side, they are going to look pretty good here. 5 to 10% ownership to most of the lineup. And that's pretty much what I'm getting as well. Corbin Carroll, 12%, my highest owned guy. Gabby Moreno, Ketel Marte, Josh Naylor, Eugenio Suarez, who's been a monster this year. All just look like, solid secondary plays, I think, for the Diamondbacks. I'm a little surprised they're not getting more ownership since they do have one of the higher implied run totals, and they're not super expensive. But 6,300 for Carroll, 5,600 for Marte, from a stacking standpoint, does make them pretty expensive in the aggregate. And then finally wrapping things up in an elite pitcher's park with the Nats taking on the Seattle Mariners. For the Nats, we have Mitchell Parker. For the Mariners, we have Logan Evans. $6,500 price tag on Evans, 8% projected ownership. I'm not getting to him too much. I only have like 2%. For the Nats, though, $6,300 price tag on Mitchell Parker, getting 4 to 5% projected ownership. Right now, I am taking a big stand on Mitchell Parker, getting to 30%. Now, keep in mind, that stand is driven by this ownership projection. So as the day goes on, if ownership comes up on him, my exposure probably will come down. But you can see on the screen that we have a pretty healthy 14 fantasy point projection on Mitchell Parker. It is a great park for pitching. It's one of the best parks that you can pitch in. great for getting strikeouts, good for limiting runs, good for limiting power. Parker has only struck out 15% of hitters so far this year, down from 20% last year, but his stuff plus grade is actually up 3 points from last year. So is his pitching plus grade. Both are below average overall, but up from when he was striking out 20% of hitters last year. I think really this is just relying on the park. It is a Mariners team that has strikeouts in their lineup. Since the start of last season, they ranked 7th in strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching. It is also a dangerous lineup. You have Raleigh, you have Rodriguez, you have Polanco, who's back to hitting well this year overall. Certainly a dangerous lineup, a Rosarena in there. But this park, the lack of ownership, like you saw more ownership coming into Francis against the Rangers in Texas. You saw ownership coming into some other guys. Stephen Kolek, more expensive by a lot than Parker. I don't mind just rolling the dice on Parker here and hoping I get a good start from him at 6,400 or 6,300. We've certainly seen him show upside in the past, and this park should help limit power. So far this season, he's only struck out 15% of righties, 16% of lefties. He has been good at limiting power, though. 144 expected ISO to righties, 126 to lefties. You're kind of just hoping for like efficiency, maybe an extra strikeout or two against the Mariners. But I like him as a contrarian option. We haven't had mid-range or cheap pitching we've really loved on this slate. So I like rolling the dice here on some Parker in this park. Offensively, I'm not getting much. James Woods, CJ Abrams, Keibert Ruiz, Luis Garcia, all coming in around 7%. Those are my highest owned guys in the game. For the field, Julio Rodriguez at 7% is the highest owned guy. So again, you just don't have a ton of power upside in this park. I don't love the offenses here, but I do like Mitchell Parker as a contrarian play. Catching up on chat really quickly, I do appreciate you guys tuning into the show in the middle of the afternoon. JB Yankee said McGill and Horton with Astro stack. Yeah, like that's going to project well. Just make sure you find the contrarian secondary stack. You don't have to be that crazy. It's an 11-game slate. I think you mentioned it later. You said I rarely play chalk, but since this has so many games on the slate, I might just stick to the stack and find a lower owned pitcher and one-off. They're still popular, but everything's relative. Like on an 11-game slate, playing a team that's 10% owned, that still means 90% of the field is not playing them. Whereas the highest owned stack on a 5-game slate, you're talking about 25% ownership. So you still want to pay attention to ownership, but you can get away with kind of leaning into projection a little bit more than you can on smaller slates. So yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it right there. Trey said kind of the same thing about them being the highest owned stack in general. Yeah, I don't think it's super concerning though, in terms of raw ownership. Dwayne said he's glad he's on at the new time. Yeah, definitely give me feedback on that because I personally prefer this time. It works better with my schedule. I don't have to, be committed to being at my computer in the afternoon. And also I think I would probably be less likely to run into scheduling issues where I end up missing shows. But if it for some reason sucks for, you guys, you don't get as much out of it, definitely let me know. Happy to kind of do whatever works in that regard. So wrapping things up, just going through position by position. Again, keep in mind that you should take most of this with a grain of salt because it is 12. This was run at like noon. But my highest owned pitching right now, Cade Horton, Joe Ryan, Taj Bradley, Mitchell Parker, Bradley and Parker because of relatively low ownership and cheap salaries. Corbin Burns, Tyler McGill, Carlos Rodon. Big fade for me right now on Hunter Brown, not because of talent, just because of projection, matchup, salary, all of that. At catcher, Yainer Diaz, Salvador Perez, Austin Wells, Paul Goldschmidt, Christian Walker, Vinny Pasquantino, my highest owned first baseman. I like Pete Alonso as well. Second base, Brandon Lau, Cody Clemens, Marcus Semien, Jose Altuve. Third base, Rafi Devers, Junior Caminero, Royce Lewis, Isaac Paredes. Shortstop, Zach Neto, Jeremy Pena, Bobby Witt, Corey Seager if he plays. Outfield, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Trent Grisham if he's in the lineup, Brandon Nimmo, Josh Lowe, Taylor Ward as a contrarian play. Top overall stacks right now, 2+ guys from a team. Yankees, Houston, Mets, Tampa, Texas. Top 5-mans, Houston, Texas, Mets, Minnesota, Washington. JB Yankees asked for a home run play. Yeah, I can just look at projections and kind of go through the top projected guys here. I'm not going to cheat and go with Aaron Judge or Juan Soto, but I do love Christian Walker here. I mentioned it when I went through the game, but great park, for hitting pulled fly balls and turning them into home runs. You have a pitcher that will give them up in JP Sears. You have Christian Walker, who has been underperforming a little bit in terms of power this year, but we know has it. I like Christian Walker here as a home run play, assuming I'm not allowed to just take Judge or Soto. So that's all I have for you for this one. Thanks again for checking out the show. Thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to use the promo code UTAMLB at the bottom of your screen to get these Run the Sims projections. Been very happy with them so far. Thanks again, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.